Hi, I'm Francesco Galietti. I'm with Francesco Sisci. Regrettably, the hook for this conversation is the passing away of Silvio Berlusconi, but we wanted to exchange notes on the implications of this death at a sudden moment. Berlusconi dies now in June, and of course we need to consider the ramifications of his death. He's been a personality larger than life, and because of that, like all grandmasters, when they pass away, he leaves behind a big mess. So we need a little bit to deconstruct the mess, understand where and how this can play out. And if you agree, Francesco, I would say we start from Russia and Ukraine, then we can move to the European Union, of course, Italy, domestic politics, and last but not least, as always, with Berlusconi, business. Okay, so let's start with Russia. What's your take?
Well, I think it is very important, also because his demise happens at the time when the Ukrainian counteroffensive is moving on. Apparently, it is in these very hours that they are moving towards Melitopol, and therefore it is possible that they'll move to a kinetic war and Russian troops could be entrapped. These are all possibilities, of course. But in this very moment, what is significant in the war is that Russia and Putin lost their main ally and supporter in Italy and Europe. Therefore, Putin suffers on two fronts. On the war fronts, that we have a counteroffensive effective by the Ukrainians, and there is less of support in Western Europe, because for all it means, Berlusconi was a big player, also because he was in the PPP of the European Union. So therefore he was playing also outside of Italy. Correct. And this could be a blow. This could be a significant blow.
Also, let's not forget that as a reflection of what you just said, it was Berlusconi who pulled the plug on Mario Draghi. So when Draghi was basically forced to resign, it was because he had Salvini, 5 stars, and Berlusconi joining forces against Draghi. So I agree with you. Moscow loses an old-time friend at a very critical moment, because it would have been very helpful to have Berlusconi alive right now, because of course it would have meant having a voice and a powerful figure advocating for peace, which basically means playing into the hands of Moscow.
Yes. Yes, it would have been especially important now, because the war is not playing out as Putin would have wished. And in a few days, in a few weeks, we will see how this offensive will evolve. However, from whatever the situation now, we can see that this is not playing out very favorably to Moscow. And another element, if I can add, is that also it is important for Poland. Poland is due to parliamentary election in autumn, in October, if I'm not mistaken. Here we have a big controversy. Poland is the main supporter of war of Ukrainian in the war against the Russians. Therefore, the role of Poland is now very important. In the future, after the war, it could be even more important. And the CDU, the Christian Democrats of of Germany would like to have the return of Donald Tusk, a conservative moderate, against the incumbent government, which is more on the right wing. Both are fiercely anti-Russian, but they promote two different ideas about the future of Europe, about the future of the European Union. Here we have a division in Italy itself, as you can explain better than me, because the present government is, and the Prime Minister is supported in its foreign efforts by the CDU, by the Christian Democrats. However, on the Polish issue, they have different views. Premier Giorgia Meloni supports the incumbent government, while the CDU supports Tusk. Without the mediating effort of Berlusconi, well, we could see a growing rift between Italy and Germany on Poland, which is pretty much the forefront of political.
It's actually interesting how much we mention Italy in events that once we would never have connected to Italy. And that's because we are in the run-up to the next EU elections. They will be in May next year, so we're less than a year away from the EU elections, and we kind of see the dynamic that is taking place. This is a moment of mingling and flirting. I think that the name of the game is optionality. All parties try to have as many options as possible. The EPP is considering a duo, an axis with ECR, but they're also not discarding the current format, which is a cross-partisan alliance with a little bit of everything in it. So socialists, the Macronians, etc., etc. And of course, with Berlusconi dead, we have one of the largest franchisees of the EPP in Southern Europe, headless. Okay, so and we know that there have been discussions on a merger between the EPP and the ECR. We know that even the League, which is part of a different grouping, has been flirting with the idea of joining the EPP through Berlusconi, but of course, without Berlusconi vouching for Salvini or Giorgetti, this is now off the table. So it's difficult to divorce discussions, reflections on Berlusconi's dramatis persona and let's say the overall setup of the European Union.
Yes. On the other hand, I think the European elections are a bit far away, and we are getting ahead of ourselves. That is, in 3 weeks, a new installment of the what is it called? The national, whatever,
NRRP.
Okay, I got confused with acronyms. The European Fund, which should give Italy a very large installment. Italy has been lagging behind in all compliance efforts to get the installment. We are already certain that there won't be a full installment, and there is already a negotiation underway about whatever money will be given to Italy now and what in the future, what are the requirements. And here again, the role of Forza Italia and of Berlusconi could have been extremely helpful, extremely important. Without him, we have less of a mediating role and less of a safety net, and therefore Italy is more in danger. And I would say in danger for two reasons. We know that in July, Wall Street closes down, while the Italian and the European stock exchanges are still open. In August, it's the other way around. and European stock exchanges are closed while Wall Street is open. Therefore, little or less than usual exchanges could move the needle of interest rates between Italy and the German Bund in one way or another. Therefore, we are going into a very delicate future without Berlusconi, with confusion about the Italian installments, with the war ongoing, and with lackluster results for the Italian economy, because for the fourth month we have an industrial decrease as big as the first months of the lockdown, the COVID lockdown. So the Italian economy is not faring too well. All these elements could be, could mix up in a very dangerous situation, and any given turbulence in the stock exchange, either in Europe or in America in the next couple of months, could drive Italy very, very far.
Yes. There is a traffic jam. There is a traffic jam in July. Lots of sovereign debt has to be refinanced. We have ongoing discussions, complicated discussions on Italy's use of EU monies. And of course, with Berlusconi dead, we're left wondering how our EU partners, the European Commission and capital markets will react. Berlusconi, his party was considered the more bourgeois component of the ruling coalition. Clearly a faded glory, but still the more bourgeois and business-friendly component in the ruling coalition. So we'll see how this will reverberate in July, because July, I agree with you, is a very tough month, and so we'll see about that. And then, of course, if we move, we've said we try to cover the implications for the war between Russia and Ukraine and the Ukrainian counteroffensive. We've touched on the EU, the next EU elections, but also the more pressing deadlines like European funds and BTPs. BTP issuances in July, but of course there is a domestic component to Berlusconi's death too, because there will be a battle for the spoils of Forza Italia. Okay, we know already many senior members of Forza Italia have left the party already. Some have joined Renzi, others have stick to Meloni, a few others may be considering joining the League. So I think that the first thing we need to be on the lookout for is whether it will be possible to keep the party intact or not, or whether it will be dissolved.
Well, this is a party, a very important element. Can the party stick together? And if not, how can we be divided? Also behind that, I would say, and we will go on the business side of the story, is what will happen with the newspapers and the media empire. This media empire has played a huge political role in Italy in the past 20, 30 years. Now it is certainly siding with the government, but without making too much of a difference. Will the media empire be part of this new spoiling system? Who will get what? Or will the media empire become eventually independent? And therefore, if independent, how it will play out in the Italian politics, domestic politics?
Yes.
These are, I'm sure these are questions which have to be answered is in the next few hours and days. I mean, are very immediate concerns.
Yes, and this is where France comes into blinking red on our radar screen. I think it's an old story, of course, and we've read many conspiracy theories about this, and I think they date back to the era when Renzi was PM. At the time, the idea was that the Italian government would help broker a deal with Vivendi on TIM and on Mediaset itself, and at some point Mediaset could be eventually sold to Vivendi, and so Bolloré basically. And as we speak, I think this whole thing hasn't been disentangled yet, because we see that Vivendi is busy negotiating the fate of TIM, Telecom Italia, and at the same time it's considered a potential buyer of Mediaset. And so we don't know what Berlusconi's heirs want to do. We can assume that it's easier to divide cash than divide shares, but let's see. I agree with you. For many years, we got used to the idea that the stability of Mediaset was a stabilizing factor for all Italian governments, left or right. Doesn't honestly matter. Basically, to keep Berlusconi and his family quiet and happy, Mediaset had to be quiet and happy. That has been the rule of the game for many, many years. And now with Berlusconi dead, of course, we don't know what's next.
Right. And also the cash issue. I mean, this is a very important element, because if you want to sell Mediaset and you want to cash out, one important element of the total value of Mediaset is its political leverage. Now, I would think that Mediaset is worth now less than it was worth a week ago, having Berlusconi alive. Therefore, if this logic carries on for the next few days, the market value of Mediaset is bound to decrease with the coming days, unless the family or the heirs will play out the political value of these assets. But that means spinning the communication strategy of all television and newspapers very strongly. And in what direction? One direction, the only possible direction, I think, should be being a moderate liberal, right-wing conservative, which is the one element which is left out by the two other components of the majority. However, actual liberal conservatives in Italy are out of fashion, so it's difficult to spin the communication strategy in this direction. These are all elements which are up in the air, but if they are not played out well, could decrease the value of the assets, Mediaset, but also, most importantly, could destabilize the political majority underpinning the government now, with big fallbacks in the next weeks, when in July and August we will have these traffic jams, as you mentioned, of debts and closures, stock exchange closures that could put everything in jeopardy.
Yeah, let's see what the future holds. Meanwhile, thank you so much for agreeing to this chat. Our plate is very, very full, as is inevitable, given what's at stake. But I think we've covered many different topics, and we'll see how this plays out. Many thanks. Ciao, Francesco.